frames or blips in OBS.
All right, yeah, it looks like it's still live.
Yeah. So yeah, the Exo Stranger is one of those that they basically kind of said that they're not sure if they're ever gonna wrap up that storyline. There'll probably be enough outcry from the community that they want to know more that I got to imagine they're gonna write something into a future Destiny story about the Exo Stranger. But yeah, that's kind of a bummer.
It's definitely a bummer.
Can I interject for 1 second?
Of course.
I have the quote up here, and this is what kills me. So pour one out for the Exo Stranger. So he ends it with, so I feel like of all of our characters we've introduced and exited, we actually exited her effectively. Nuh-uh.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't feel that way.
Right. I feel like this is a case of they're too close to it. You know, like there was answers that he has received because he works there that makes sense to him. There's some little tidbit of a connection that makes sense to him, but because we're on the outside, this is, you know, something that I was the last 2 weeks. I've had my mother-in-law here because this broken rib is a bummer. You know, picking up kids is a bummer, chasing around kids is a bummer. So I've had my mother-in-law here, and so she's been here long enough to hear me talk about Destiny and Guardian 1 and all of these things, and so she started asking me questions. And it's always fascinating to me when I meet somebody who has no idea about any of this, because how do you explain it in so many words? Like, how do you accurately describe what the game is or what it's about? You know, like, how do you break it down to its lowest common denominator where it still makes sense? So this is that same case. Like, we don't have the same information that he does. Maybe in his estimation, the reason that he thinks that they wrapped it up nicely is because on his end it made sense. But to me, I feel like this person came in, did some interesting stuff, and now we're waiting for more interaction. Why would that be the only interactions that we have with this person? It doesn't make sense to me. But maybe it makes sense to him because he knows what happened to the stranger after this. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where at the same time I feel like they're really trying to separate themselves from the Destiny 1 storyline, where they're kind of like, let's kind of push away from that. People didn't really accept that whole thing very well. Let's try and do our own thing. Because even, I think in that same article, Luke mentions, we're not going to really talk about the darkness much either. So, good luck there, trying to figure that out. And it's really
Dispatch,
interesting.
He says, because I got it up here too, he says, we never really said what the darkness means. Ultimately, we owe our players a story there. What is the darkness? But that's not this game.
And then that's when everyone cries.
He actually said that they didn't know what the darkness even was during Destiny 1.
Right.
Which isn't very Bungie. It's not a very Bungie move.
No, that boggles my mind.
This is it's nice though. It's nice to have actual words behind this, because a lot of people have always referred to Destiny 1 as the Destiny beta. I paid this much money to be part of this Destiny beta, and that's basically exactly what they said it was. When they refer to Destiny 1 as the zero, as a comic book number 0, that's what you're talking about. They threw some ideas out there, and it's interesting if you think about it, because like some of this grimoire and some of these backstories, it's like first person accounts, or like, this is just what this person wrote down happened. Like, we are now part of that lore, like when we're in Destiny 4 or 5 and we've never heard of the stranger again, we are part of that. We are the people who were there and saw that. We will know who this mysterious Exo Stranger is, and it will just be part of this. It will have been a blip on this scale. So now we are accomplices in this, being part of this Destiny beta. So I mean, it's nice to get that recognition. It's nice to, okay, well, we're using the same terms. You understand that this was a beta. We understand that this was a beta, and I'm happy moving on from that. I feel like when they say that this is the real start of Destiny, I'll go along with that. and I was happy to play all of this Destiny beta, and I was really happy to give all of my feedback. And 137 episodes of this podcast in, it's still a lot of fun. Like even if all of this gets wiped out, nothing carries over. We have very little to represent our time in game. I had a really good time. I've made a lot of really good friends, and this just improves our standing going into Destiny 2. Like going into Destiny 2, if you've made friends, if you've made buddies and you have a group of people, you're going to go into Destiny 2 and you're going to clean up, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a lot of fun. I feel like it's
well,
going to be
it kind
of
of solidified in my mind a little bit that the Destiny 1 story really did go through the shredder, and they had a few months to put together what they could from a story perspective, because he's acting like the story that they want to tell is part of a 10-year story arc. Destiny 1 doesn't fit very well into that story. They're going to create new story threads that they will weave through a 10-year plan, or now it's probably going to be a 7-year plan, that isn't going to be that consistent with what we experienced in Destiny 1. The only thing that bothers me about it is I really do like consistency across storylines. I guess I understand. I'm glad that he's being transparent about it so that we're not left constantly trying to tie all these things together, right? We're not going to experience Destiny 2 and feel like, how is this going to fit within the whole context? The people that I worry about, the lore masters out there are going to have a heck of a time.
Yeah.
This is like their whole world falling apart. Because I'm sure that they assumed like, oh, more is going to come that's going to explain all of these loose ends. And this is him pretty much saying, nah, we're pushing a soft reset on this, and we're going to go with a new direction and a new story.
Yeah,
granted,
that's disappointing.
They've got some job security there, right? I mean, they've got a lot of new material that they get to digest and reproduce for us as the consumers. But yeah, it does make you wonder a little bit about the work that you put in for the last 3 years trying to understand the lore, if in the end it's just going to get changed or eliminated.
That's
go for it.
Go on.
Oh, I was going to talk about the Traveler and how, I remember way back before the game came out, we were always talking about the Traveler. What's inside the Traveler? What is the Traveler? What is the Traveler doing? Yeah. And then you read this article.
Traveler a Dyson sphere?
Yeah. Sphere. And then you read this article, and basically he's saying, yeah, we're not going to really talk about the Traveler much either. So, just this is more of a story about the Red Legion and Gaul. And you're kind of like, but I kind of want to know about the Traveler, though. I mean, Gaul's cool and all, but what is the speaker? Why does he talk to the Traveler? What is the Traveler doing? Why is it not doing anything right now? Why is it letting this happen? All these things that could be explored that they're kind of like, we just kind of want to focus on Gaul. And that's cool. More streamlined story, but at the same time, you're like, there's so much there that they're just kind of abandoning. And it's very disappointing. But if we can get a good, coherent story in this game, we'll be stepping in the right direction, I think.
Okay, so it's interesting that you say this and that they've said this, because I feel like we need to know more. I feel like we need to know more about the Traveler. I feel like we need to know more about their speaker, and I'm really hoping that moving forward that there is actual forward motion on this ball. Like, okay, so we start off Destiny 2 at a serious disadvantage, and Gaul's taking over the city, and there's this clamp on the Traveler. There's no way in hell that I'm interested in that clamp being on that Traveler for the next 2 years or 3 years. I need there to be forward motion on this story. I'm talking about in 6 months, there needs to be some kind of DLC that changes something. Maybe we take back the city, but the inner wall is still being held by Gaul or something. There needs to be forward motion, like the idea that, we start off this game and then this stays like this whole time. And also, I'm hoping that there is like maybe some redirects happening there. Like maybe they plan on talking about the Traveler, but they're not going to say that to anyone. The reason I think that this would be a great idea is because in that homecoming mission, number one of the cool lines that I thought was really excellent was when Amanda Holiday said, Zavala, I picked up that Guardian you never shut up about. That really made me happy. I thought that was, and you know what? And for some reason, that line transcends my knowledge of. I know that there's millions of Guardians, and that Amanda Holiday is saying that to every Guardian. Like, I hope that there's more experiences like that where I can simultaneously acknowledge that I'm not the only person that this line is being said to, and at the same time know that I could see that, like I could see Zavala telling, this Amanda Holiday about the things. But more importantly, the next line was when she looks at the Traveler and she says, "Come on, big guy, do something." Like, that was really powerful to me. Very small line, but very powerful in that, okay, well, maybe you've never done anything in the entire time that I've been alive, but maybe now is it. Maybe now you're going to do something. This makes me want there to be there's just no way that the Traveler just sits there for the next 2 years or 3 years. I will be disappointed. I will be severely disappointed if there is no forward motion on one of these aspects of the story. Thoughts?
No, for sure. I mean, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I was just going to say that her saying that, right? "Come on, big guy," showed a level of intimacy with the Traveler. That maybe her as a warlock and the amount of understanding of how things work in a way that, warlocks would understand, puts her in this position where she has this connection, this relationship almost with the Traveler. And I feel like me as a character, again, it's been a pretty stagnant piece of the game for me. We hear a lot about it, but it isn't something that's engaging. It isn't interactive. It's a very one-way relationship. But that's not the way that she spoke to the Traveler. And it made me kind of think, well, what are the dynamics going to be that change that so that we feel more that way? Like, we have an interaction with the Traveler. We can compel the Traveler in terms of, we have this feeling like we can say to the Traveler, "Come on, now's the time that in our time of need, we need something to happen here."
Yeah, I mean, that's a story element that's incredibly important and one that's been severely lacking. But I mean, if you, the reason I think Amanda is so attached or says something like that is more likely because the Traveler saved humanity, basically. I mean, that's what he did, or it did. So I think there's a very big emotional attachment between characters in the world, characters in the city, the humans who live there, between the Traveler and them, just based on the history. But unfortunately, like you're saying, that history doesn't come across as a player, because we literally only see the Traveler do anything when light kind of comes from him at the end of the main story campaign, and that's about it. He just kind of sits there and does nothing. So yeah, like you're saying, I hope they pick that up, and I hope they do something with that. I mean, there are throwaway lines that they've tried to kind of make it seem more like a really important character. But there's obviously something lacking there, and I don't think they'll do anything in it with Destiny 2. I mean, I know your hope is there, Remy, but at the same time, I feel like Luke is kind of like, I don't know, guys. I mean, I hope it is a redirect, and I hope I get halfway through the story mission, story missions in Destiny 2, and it's like, oh, check it out, guys, we're going to talk about the Traveler, and he's going to do something. And I would be like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. But at the same time, I don't feel like that's going to happen. But I do hope. One thing I will say that I don't want to happen with this story is Gaul be the raid boss. I know people want that, but I don't want him to be the raid boss, because that puts the story in a very tight situation. Because basically what that means is we're going to have to push Gaul back out of the city, or fight him in the city, I guess. Could be a thing, but I don't want the story to be put on hold, just kind of stop and be like, okay, guys, you got to go beat the raid now to fight Gaul. Good luck. That's not going to be good. And I hope they really sit down, and seeing as Gaul is such an interesting character, kind of push him beyond that. Push him beyond that. And hopefully he becomes a character that is way more than just Axis or Oryx or Crota, and just is there for us to kill over and over and over again.
I like that idea too, and I feel like they're definitely building him up to be a very important character. I don't know.
On something like that too, I agree. I would definitely not want him to be the raid boss, at least of the first raid that comes out, because what that does as far as just the over arc of Destiny 2 is it makes it very short.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to run into the same problem that Destiny 1 ran into, where the initial section completed and then we had all the DLC, but the DLC was all incredibly fragmented and none of it really flowed into each other. They're all individual stories without an overall cohesive storyline. So I think if they do this, where they make it completely have Gaul be the final raid boss of the first one, it's just going to be the exact same thing.
Well, but the only way that would work, and I wouldn't be mad at this, is if that was when the story moved on. You know, like I really want there to be forward progress. I don't want to just sit here with Gaul in the city for 3 years. Like that is not the way the game should go. That's going to be a serious disappointment. So he should be the raid boss when we're ready to move on to this next iteration of the game. And I'm not certain how they would really even do that with, you know, these people haven't completed the raid yet, and so they're still in a city, or they still aren't able to get back to the city or whatever. But you know what? I'm not being paid to answer these questions, so you know, someone down there got to figure it out.
Yeah, like even when I think of the Taken King, we killed Oryx really fast.
Right?
We just did, and we were just killing Oryx for forever, and nothing really progressed. And then all the DLC and the live events came on, and it wasn't related to what the main storyline of Year 2 was.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hope that maybe we have dynamic raid bosses. I mean, we've got the whole Cabal, you know, army. The Red Legion is at our doorstep. What if it's just, you know, higher ranking members of the Cabal army that you go into the raid, and you know, you have this dynamic system where you're fighting a new raid boss that might even have slightly tweaks to the mechanics every time you go in, and it's a little bit of a unique experience. You know, not like what we saw in Challenge of the Elders, where it's the same kind of 9 bosses on a rotation, but actually having a long string, maybe 100 different bosses that could get plugged into that, and you don't know what it's going to be until you're there and you're doing it.
I would love to see different sections of the raid and maybe have different bosses in every section, and every week it's randomized. The only downside that would really bum me out if they ever did something like that is loot drops, because then you don't get a boss for like 5 weeks in a row and he's dropping that one piece that you're like really after. It's really kind of what I would hope they avoid if they ever did anything.
Man, I love that.
Like that.
I'd rather have that, have the rarity be put in because you were able to, you know, get the raid boss that you wanted at a given time and have them attached to something specific rather than just RNG. You know, I'd rather have it tied to something than it just be RNG.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe they could do something that would be like a roadmap of sorts, where, you know, like here's 5 weeks and here are the 5 bosses, but they unlock after each week. So if you get them done one a week, then that's how it's spaced out. But if you start on week 4, then you still have access to 1, 2, 3, and 4 before 5 comes out. So like maybe you would be able to still catch up if you were on deployment for a couple of weeks or a couple of months or whatever, and then you were able to catch up, like, here, this has been released and now you still have access to this. I think that would be cool too.
Yeah. So I'm going to channel Jez on this, because I'm going to talk the way that World of Warcraft raids work.
I love it.
So right up Jez's alley. So I'm going to be like, I'm going to put my Jez hat on right now. The way that World of Warcraft raids work, and it's something that, you know, I really do enjoy the model, but it's a little bit different because their raids are way harder than anything I've ever done on Destiny. They release, you know, 1 or 2 raid bosses, and then over the next couple of weeks, they keep adding them up to the end. And what that does is it kind of staggers it out, staggers the content, makes everything nice and fresh. So I don't know if I could ever see Destiny doing something like that, but it is an interesting model.
I like it.
So another thought on the raids, we just found out either today or yesterday that they're going to introduce a new raid mechanic where there's a different type of penalty if you wipe, but they haven't really given us any indication of what that penalty is going to be. Do you guys have any speculations, any thoughts of what this could be?
I'm thinking that it could definitely be something like what they've introduced in the Crucible, where there's like tokens. In the Crucible, you don't get unlimited revives, or at least in the Crucible modes that we've seen, you have like 2 or 3 chances to revive people, and then that's it for the round. Because what they're saying, if you want to read between the lines, is they're saying that when you're in an encounter in a heroic mode and you die, and then the other 5 people complete that mode, it's not really that fun to be just the person who's just sitting there, which I don't think it's totally true. Like as much as I would rather be part of the team that's pulling, because I don't want Gray to put a check mark down by my name, it still is awesome when the group of people you're with make it through that encounter without you. Like it still is rewarding. I'm still happy to get those rewards. I'm never like, no, dudes, we're doing this again. Like I'm going to be part of the people shooting this bad guy, or else I didn't really feel like I earned it. No, man, I've run all these raids a bunch of times. I've been one of those people who's helped pull other people through. So I think that what they're saying is they're going to make death not so permanent. And I mean, really, the easy way to address this would be kind of the way they've done challenges right now, is that if you fail the challenge, that doesn't mean that you've failed the encounter. You've just failed the challenge. So like if you want to get heroic credit for this, then you either can't die or you start over. Like or maybe you don't take that revive token or whatever. Like I feel like that's the middle ground. So you want to get the heroic credit. If you die, you stay dead, you don't revive. If you just want to keep playing and have a good time, you can revive, and then you can finish the encounter, but you're not getting that heroic credit. I could see that being the middle ground. Did you have an idea, Gray?
I've thought about, I've seen people talking about the token type system, especially because they've already introduced that into those other game modes. I'm not sure what else that they could do. Obviously, they want to make the raids something that's more appealing to a broader player base. They said 50% of players haven't completed a raid yet, and that, it's supposed to be challenging, it's supposed to be end game, but they also want to see that number be a lot lower for the people who haven't completed. They want the completion rate to be a lot higher than that. So yeah, I think that I wonder if they're going to actually reduce even some of the time cooldown. Even the 30 seconds that you're waiting to jump back into an encounter can actually influence quite a bit of what's going on. You can miss out on a fair bit of content even though in those 30 seconds. But I'm kind of hoping that they do something that's outside of the box that we haven't thought of yet, but I can't think of anything else.
What about you, Unilala? Have you had a chance to think about this and what this specific mechanic could be?
Yeah, when you think about it, it really does make sense that if they are going to be changing the mechanics, the token thing that they're introducing in PvP is something that I can see that they would think would be very attractive to bring into PvE. The more kind of homogenization between the kind of like the functions on how everything's working between the two sections of the game, the PvP and the PvE, is really only going to foster people trying other things out, and it is going to make people used to the new functions. That being said, when I read the article, it does look like they may do that, but it looks like they also have some other things up their sleeves that Honestly, I have no idea what they're thinking, especially because they said, they're saying hard mode as we know it is not going to be it. There's not going to be no revives on hard mode anymore. Um, so how they change the hard mode and normal mode kind of strategies and how they're going to be applying that to the new raid is beyond me. I'm really excited to see it, but that's also one of the things where I'm also really hoping we don't get too much information on, because I love going into the raid blind. The less information, the better on day one. I know not everyone feels that way, but
I
What
feel
if,
that way.
since it's going to truly be, I mean, still supposed to be a penalty. I mean, I've thought, could they make it so that the opponents are more difficult with every res that you do? They actually, the enemies are harder to kill. They get buffs, essentially. But that's going to just almost create a cycle where, you're going to
You're gonna
continue
want to
to
wipe
die
anyways.
more. And then you need to revive more. They keep getting stronger. And then I've wondered, like, well, could it actually be something that's painful in the sense of, do you lose something on your character? Do you lose your primary weapon? Do you lose, I mean, all your ammo, something like that? Could they take something away from you as part of that resurrection, in that encounter?
I feel like all of these ideas just lead to saying, well, just wipe anyways. If that was the case, like, oh well, I could res, or but everything's going to get much harder. Like that's not going to help, too many people. So I don't know. Not bad ideas, but I feel like basically everything that we've said just leads me to want to wipe anyways. Let's just wipe right now, just in case, for Destiny 2. Chance, what about you? What do you think about this new mechanic in the raid that they've been talking about? They said that they didn't want to make it any less hard, but it's not fun just being the person who's sitting there watching the other people play.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of this, simply because I think Bungie is starting to go the opposite way of what I would want with these sort of raids. I really wanted more to the raids. I wanted more bosses. I wanted more encounters. I wanted more difficulty, levels to the raids. But it seems like Bungie's really focusing on a more streamlined experience for every player to get to experience it in their own way. And I think that's cool and all. But the raids are a really big factor as to why people keep playing. If you make them easier, I feel like people are going to blow through them, just a weekly thing, and just be like, all right, see you next week. This is a really easy thing. I'm just going to go do real quick. Whereas, you can do that in a couple of hours if you have a good team, but the fun behind it is still saying this encounter isn't easy. If one of us messes up, sorry, time to start over again. Because if you don't, you're going to end up losing or you're going to end up dying. It's not going to be fun, right? So I think that that's a really important experience to the raid, because if it's easier, if they change up the way that the death penalty works, then you're going to have something where the loot that drops is not going to be as big. It's not going to be as impressive. We're not going to be like, oh my gosh, this thing just dropped, because we're like, well, I mean, we just kind of blew through it real quick because, we were able to just pick people back up and just keep going at it until we killed it. We didn't have to wipe and we didn't have to figure everything out. You know what I'm saying? So I hope that if they're going to do this thing, I hope that they really focus more on mechanics, and people getting the mechanics right. I really don't want, if they're going to do this new system where you can just be revived, I don't want it to be focused on just do as much damage as you can to the boss in one certain time. I really want it to be like, okay, we have to hit these mechanics right. We have to hit jumps. We have to hit, maybe some more shield stuff where you have to, shoot stuff just right. That kind of stuff has to be more important if they're going to go for a more lesser death penalty approach. That way people are still having to come together. They're still having to have as many people as possible to run through this thing. I think for the specific items of being the death penalty, I think debuffs on a player like Gray was mentioning is probably what they're going to go with. Maybe slower movement speed, maybe your damage is reduced, one player's damage is reduced at a given time, or little things that are going to make the single player who you revive's experience a little harder. I don't think that they're going to go the route of making the whole raid harder if someone dies and you revive them. I think it's going to be a more player experience where you get revived. Like I said, your slower movement. You may have your super is charging slower, or your ammo count drops slower, stuff like that. That kind of makes the experience for that one player who accidentally or ended up dying a little bit tougher, but not too tough. But at the same time, again, I would just rather prefer just die and wipe, because I think that that's the experience that the raids are best at, when you come together as 6 people and are like, we're not going to wipe this go around. We're going to do this thing and we're going to do it right. And then you do it and you freak out because you got the gun and you just losing your mind. I think that's an experience that only a permadeath sort of experience can bring you, personally.
You know what? I just got an idea. What if there's just an extra layer of checkpoints? So, for example, like Vosix. So, you die and then you stay dead until Vosix is dead. Well, what if after every time you cleansed the room, there was a checkpoint, and that was when the revive showed up? So, like, instead of having to wait until you're all the way dead, you just have to keep going until a specific point in time, or like with Oryx. Like you die and then you have to wait until the person runs all the way up that those platforms, and then when you reconvene, or after that damage, like after you all do the damage on Oryx, and he stutters for a second, like there's another like mini checkpoint where you come back in. So instead of waiting the entire encounter, there's like mini checkpoints where the team still has to come together and still has to communicate and collaborate to do this, but it's not the entire time. It's not the entire encounter. It's just you have to get to another checkpoint. I feel like this solves a lot of the problems. What am I missing, Unalala?
I'm missing my mic. I mean, on something like that, it's just really interesting trying to think of the way that they're going to work things out. You honestly said a lot of what I was thinking, as far as, the way that they're going to be looking at the raids. And what you were thinking really reminds me of complexes in Vault of Glass. There's so many different checkpoints in there. Can you imagine having to go through that whole thing with the Templar without having a checkpoint?
Right.
That would
Definitely.
be like, everyone would be like flipping tables.
Yeah.
I already hate it. I hate
people
it the way it
buying
is.
tables.
It is pretty difficult sometimes, especially in hard mode. But as far as going through and having more checkpoints, I do think having more checkpoints would be a nice thing. But I think it really depends on how, let me see if I can phrase this right, how dynamic the raid is going to be. Because when I think of checkpoints, I think of Vault of Glass. But then when I think of the most recent raid, which is Wrath of the Machine, yeah, it has checkpoints, but it's also, I feel like that raid is a lot more dynamic. That one's a lot more flowing. And everyone loves Vault of Glass, but everyone also loves Wrath of the Machine. Those are 2 very different raids that are kind of capping off Destiny 1 that people like, and their approach is very different. So seeing how they can take kind of the both of those and trying to merge that into something that everyone's going to love right at the launch of D2. I'm interested to see.
Gray, what do you think? What am I missing in my multiple mini checkpoint idea? If Jez was here, he'd have a whole list of things that are wrong with it.
Yeah. But you'd never say you're an idiot because he'd craft it in a much more polite way, but he'd still leave you feeling with that same impression.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
No, the only thing that I think would be a criticism on the mini checkpoints would be how badly is it going to interrupt the flow of the encounters, and then are people going to complain that the raids are too easy. And that's my big worry about in all this is the nightfalls are not really nightfalls anymore, right? I don't really feel like I go in those thinking, all right, time to put my big boy pants on. We're going to go do a nightfall. And I used to feel that way. I used to feel like, man, I got to make sure I'm on my game to go into these nightfalls. I still feel that way unless it's our Monday night raid team. And then I just kind of kick my feet up and we go through and kick butt. But if I'm going into these 390 raids, even, I know that I have to focus at least a little bit. I don't want it to turn into something that just is too casual. And whatever mechanic they bring in, if they want to get rid of the death penalty, it better be something that's equitable, that it still feels rewarding to go through and complete that encounter.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Chance, one last word on this before we move on.
I think the raids are really important. They're really fundamental to the end game of Destiny 2 or Destiny 1, and I think they will be the same in Destiny 2. I think that it's just really important that Bungie realizes that this is really something that can't be, like Gray is saying, can't be too easy, because then the end game gets completely thrown off. Because you are in Destiny either working towards getting max level or working towards getting geared for the raid. I mean, I know that 50% of the players haven't experienced the raid, and that sucks. That's really a really awful thing to happen. But at the same time, those 50% of people who did play the raids, they remember their experiences very fondly of being like, okay, what do I need for this raid? Let me go look up, I don't know, a Dado video or something. Let me figure out the important fundamentals that I can go in. Or there were other people who just went in blindly and they were like, you know what, let's do this thing. Let's not get any kind of help. And it took them hours upon hours upon hours. And that's a really important experience. And it's fundamental for D2 to have an experience like that. But the way that Luke's talking about it, I don't feel like it's going to be the same sort of experience that we had in D1 when we first loaded up Vault of Glass and had no idea what we were doing and totally got just destroyed multiple times. But then once we finally got to the end and you got your Mythic class, you almost peed yourself because it was such a rewarding experience. And that's sort of dissipating now in Destiny 1, actually, that experience of the loot being so incredible. That is something that has sort of faded away a little bit, and I think it's going to be more of that in D2 with just how they're talking about exotics and the in-game content. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll see.
Okay, so
that's one of my concerns too with the loot pool. Like, I know that loot is important for keeping people engaged in the game, but man, I love the feeling of getting something that is rare, that is hard to get, that either you had to earn through a lot of, sweat and tears to get through a really difficult encounter to have a guaranteed exotic drop like Black Spindle was, or the random drops like the Galahorn. I was not in year one, so I could only watch the Destiny YouTube videos of people getting their first Galahorn, and the amount of joy on their face to get that weapon to drop. I hope that they can bring that back into Destiny 2, because right now it's just, if this stuff is supposed to be like fine wine, it's like we're drinking water. There's just too much of it around.
Yeah. Okay, so this leads me into the next thing I'd like to talk about. I'm gonna ask this again next week when the three amigos are back. But I'm curious to know two things. So I feel like this right now we are at the end of Destiny 1, and so there's like a bit of like short timers going on. They're just handing out all this crazy awesome loot, and I mean everything is back. I saw ADMG04, he got a year one piece of Titan armor, like a vanilla piece of Titan armor that could be upgraded to 400. Like, that's fantastic. And so I feel like the way Bungie is handling this is, well, let's just give everyone all of the things that they wanted to get before Destiny 2 comes out. So my question is, and I'll start with you, Chance, if this was the pattern, so the pattern is Bungie releases a Destiny 1, 2, 3, 4. And in the very beginning, loot is insanely hard to get, and it's insanely rough. Vanilla Destiny getting a legendary engram
Oh man, yeah.
was a huge deal. It was a huge deal, and at this point, I can't turn in 4 blues without one of them turning into a legendary engram.
Yeah.
And so if this is the cycle being let's give nothing out in the beginning, and then let's give a little bit more out until the very end. Let's give everything out, and then they wipe the slate totally clean for the next game. Would this bother you? And I ask because when I think about this, I think that I would be fine with this. I think that if I knew that none of my stuff was carrying over from game 1 to game 2, and there wasn't that allusion to, what you're going to do now is going to carry over your Guardian you're going to take with you for 10 years. I think that if I didn't think that, I would be fine with it now. So if this was the way it is, like say Destiny 2 launches, we have crap for drops, everything is hardships, it gets easier and easier until the very end, and they're handing out everything, and then Destiny 2, nothing carries over, Destiny 3, you start over. Would this be an acceptable pattern for you? Would this be okay?
Probably not. Just because I think that, like I said, loot is incredibly important. But at the same time, you have to look at the fundamentals of what keeps people playing. And what keeps people playing is seeing that little thing pop up in the right corner of their screen that spins around and is like, hey, look at this thing you got. That's incredibly important. And I think the driving factor behind people's disappointment in Destiny 1 was the lack of loot. And why they stopped playing was because they just couldn't get what they wanted when the first game came out. Now, exotics should be extremely rare. If you see someone wielding an exotic, you should go, oh my gosh, that guy went through hell and back to get that exotic. He did something. And that's something they talked about way back before Destiny even released. That's what they wanted. It never happened. And it doesn't look like it's going to happen in D2. But I do think that there should be tiers of legendary gear. I think you should have your basic legendary gear that the stats are kind of meh on. You can look. I mean, it happens right now. You have god roll guns and things like that in the current meta, but I feel like they really are going to want to have the legendaries staggered in a way. They need to have it so that there are legendaries on top of exotics that players are like, I need that legendary thing, because I think legendaries right now are totally like, got a legendary, cool. In the first game, or at the beginning of the first game, you said, yeah, it was really rare. But at the same time, when they started popping more, they became less important. It was like the stats aren't really that great on these legendary gears. There's not really anything on it that makes me go, oh my gosh, I have to go to this vendor or that place to get this piece of legendary gear. And I think they really need to try and balance their ecosystem with legendary and exotics. Make the exotics amazing, overpowered, because I think exotics should be overpowered in PvE, but they don't think the same way, and I can understand that reasoning. But also at the same time, people need to have more to chase, and I think just having exotic gear, the only thing that they chase, is not great. I think there needs to be levels. We need to have basic Vanguard type legendary gear that you get that still makes players go, oh, it's a legendary, it's purple, cool. But at the same time, I could have better purples. I could have this purple from this encounter that gives me this stat, and that's really cool, and I want to work towards that, but I'm still getting that steady purple drop. Isn't great, but it keeps me going. I think that's something that's really important. I don't think year 1 Destiny is a good way to go for Destiny 2, because I think people are so used to the loot now that if we went back into Destiny 2 with a year 1 encounter, we'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do with myself right now. I'm not getting anything, and it's like so frustrating. So there's just a balance. They have to strike a balance, and I know that's easier said than done, but that's really the most important element.
I agree. Yeah. The only thing I'd like to throw in on there is that in the very beginning, we're going to know so little about so few weapons. Like even now, I will get a legendary every now and then that I've never heard of before.
Yeah.
Like the other day, I got a hand cannon called "How Dare You," and I just I just never ever paid attention to that. And then a couple of days later, I got a fusion rifle, legendary fusion rifle that I'd never heard about before. So like in the beginning of D2, it'll be, I don't know about any of these pieces of gear.
Right.
And so I do agree with you. There definitely needs to be a balance. And I feel like through all of these years, they have to have at least the data written down that will help that. Additionally, I have to have Sweet Business, that exotic auto rifle, the that one that looks like a Gatling gun. I have to have that.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about getting that. Unilala, what do you think about this? Destiny releases, they give you crap. They work it up a little bit, and towards the end, they give you everything, and then at the end of that, they take it all away before going into the next game. Is this a cycle that you could get on board with?
Take it all. Goodbye. I want all new things. And that's probably because I'm conditioned from, previous MMOs, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XI. You get awesome stuff, but you don't keep it forever. And that's part of the lore. I mean, there's certainly, different ways that they could have gone with D2. And the only thing that really matters to me to go from one big solid game to another, as far as, Destiny goes, is my Guardian. My Guardian, my story. That's all I really care about. I mean, listen, especially coming out, with what all they're saying about this is, episode 0 is really Destiny 1, and now the real story starts. They could have very easily have dumped our Guardians. Easily. We could all have died at the tower, and then the European dead zone, new character wakes up, not even a Guardian. Let's go get some light and help humanity take the city back. They totally could have gone with a completely different type of storyline. So recognizing that, the only thing I really care about is continuing the story and the legend of my Guardian. So gear, I don't care. Take it. I want all new stuff anyways. I want new flavor text. I want new looks. I want to have something new to go chase. So take it.
But Fatebringer. Everyone loves their Fatebringer.
I love my Fatebringer. But if you love it, you gotta let it go.
Chance, it's funny. It's funny that you bring up Fatebringer because I just only got Fatebringer for the first time after they released these 390 raids. And for the longest time, like, I'm not a hand cannon guy, and for the longest time I was like, you know what, you can have your Fatebringer. Everyone talks about it. It's probably best that I don't have one because everyone enjoys it. And now I see, like, I went on a huge rant like 2 or 3 episodes ago where I'm pissed off now because it's at the end of Destiny 1 and I have one, and it is so fantastic. It's such a fun, so snappy and powerful, and what a great weapon. So I definitely want to keep my Fatebringer. Sadly. Gray, same question to you. Hardship in the beginning, I feel like, no matter what, we are facing hardship in the beginning because we're not starting off with anything that we're likely going to keep. So what do you think about the idea that at the end of Destiny 2, going into Destiny 3, they say the same thing? You don't get to keep anything. We're starting all over with new gear. Do you feel like this is something that Bungie should continue to do?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think that with each new generation of the game, I didn't even have, obviously as a year 2 player, but the whole idea of having a hard reset even during the game cycle where old weapons are sunsetted, essentially, you could still use them, but they weren't going to be effective for the new content. That doesn't bother me either, because I want the chase. I want to have to earn something that's new to help me work my way through the game. I don't really like the idea that the guns that I was able to earn through activities played 2 years ago are now still what's getting me through the brand new content and the new raids that are dropping. I don't really like that very much. So that's fine. I think there should be a decent amount of turnover, but I like how they did it with Black Hammer and Black Spindle. Like, make these weapons have continuity in themselves, that they are, new generations of an older weapon with a story behind them. That's what I'd like to see most.
I like that a lot, and it makes a lot of sense. And sometimes I forget about the sunsetting on some of the year one weapons. I have one page of my vault is dedicated to gear that is 170 and below. And so I definitely get what you're saying, and I definitely understand from a developer's point of view why you would want people to let go of their old stuff. Like you've been using this forever. You're not changing the game if you're not changing your gear, because the gear is a large part of how the game plays. And the chase, there definitely needs to be a chase. So all of that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like as soon as they ripped off that Band-Aid of duct tape saying, nothing is transferring over, I feel like a huge weight was lifted off of me. And I'm really able to go in and delete a bunch of stuff that I know I'm not going to use. Really, I feel like I'm a pretty big creature of habit. So, something that works for me well, I will just keep using that because that's what works the best. But, having other options is really great. I know that I'm going to do a lot of weapon exploration, at least in the beginning, finding out what works for me and what's new and exciting. And really this next thing I want to talk about is the idea behind these free slots, Bungie's so-called free slots, where you have 2 slots worth of primary weapons. One of them is kinetic and one of them is elemental. The more I think about this, the more excited I am for this. And a lot of people have said that, they feel like they're having their options taken away from them. And to me, I feel like all I've been given is options now. Especially because you knew that people weren't going to drop the idea of elemental primaries. I think what's going to be important to see and what's going to be interesting is whether or not we can add or remove the elemental, because, on some things, like I might like to just have a machine gun or an auto rifle that's kinetic. Because I enjoy having a hand cannon to this elemental. So being able to move elements around is a very important aspect of what I think is going to be, in order to use these free slots adequately, I need to be able to decide what goes where. And I think that we will see some kind of modification exchanges. But I'm excited to know what you think, Chance. What do you think about these free slots? The ability to where you can have 2 hand cannons or, a scout rifle and an auto rifle. Like going into Destiny 1 right now, it's always like, well, I just have to pick a scout rifle because that's what works best all around for me. But I love auto rifles. Auto rifles were my jam for all of the Halo games. And hand cannons are very useful. I've seen a lot of people use hand cannons to great damage. This is to say nothing. And pulse rifles are very handy as well. What do you think about these free slots?
As soon as this was announced, I was like, heck yes, thank you, Jesus, because this is really opening up the door for player choice. And I think people are overlooking the idea of this player choice that Destiny 2 is really trying to provide. I mean, if you look at, I just was very interested when they talked about the power weapons. I'm really happy that they were like, let's take everything that is a one-shot or everything that does extreme damage and let's put it all in one category. Let's make it something that people don't have a ton of ammo for, but when they do have the ammo for it, they're going to destroy with that thing, both in Crucible and in the PvE experiences. I think that's really important. The power weapons being all together, including shotguns, fusion rifles, and snipers, is a big deal. I mean, it's a big fundamental change to how the game works, but I think it's also an area where they can go, all right, now we can make shotguns kind of crazy. We can make them do a lot of damage, more than what they normally do. We can make fusion rifles have a longer range and more damage on it. We can have snipers do some really cool things because they're weapons that players are going to have more limited access to. And as for the 2 primaries, I think it's really awesome to be able to play the way I want to play, like you were talking about, Remy. I love scout rifles and I love hand cannons, but I'm not able to use both. Now I am. now I can have my scout rifle there in case I need to shoot someone from a really far, distance. But then when someone comes up on me, quickly switch to my hand cannon and pop them in the head a few times, and there you go. I think it opens up player choices too with abilities. You can, I really hope they go kind of crazy with the perk system with the weapons, with specifically power weapons, but also elemental weapons. I hope they do some really cool different tied to the burn that they do. I really think that would be a cool little element. I don't know if that's going to happen, but
yeah, I like it.
But that's kind of where I stand. It's always good to have player choice. That's incredibly important, and it looks like they're really trying to open that up a little bit more.
Okay, so you bring up that power slot, and I've always felt like sniper rifles and shotguns, they are power weapons. If you're able to one hit kill with these things, then they are heavy weapons, and you're totally right. Moving them into this power slot means that they can give them that kick. They don't have to worry about balancing it out so much, because if you're able to kill with a rocket launcher, a bunch of people, then you can now turn shotguns into like massive killing machines, because there's going to be a much more limited access to it. That's a really great point, and it just really highlights, I think, that Bungie's clearly been thinking about this, and I love it. I love that they moved those to this power slot. Like it all sounds so great, and I love your examples for the free slots too. Like that's really great. Unilala, what do you make of these freedom slots, and have you taken into account what you might want your loadouts to be? You're muted though.
It's a pattern. Actually, yeah. I mean, I have put a lot of thought into it. I would say my primary playstyle is scout rifle. I love scout rifles because I feel like they have a really great range. I mean, I typically roll with a sidearm, but I would like to be able to put a hand cannon in there. So the idea of being able to kind of go freely between them and, pick your poison as far as your, shield burner, depending on what you're looking at, is great. Being able to go from one gun to burn down a shield into another gun of the exact same archetype for more kinetic damage is actually really interesting. And I know, I agree. A lot of people are really, feeling a lot of trepidation around moving, shotguns and snipers into that heavy weapon slot that we're so used to. But I think having the ability to have two different primaries going on, depending on what their kinetic and elemental damage is going to be, is really just going to open up a lot more of really interesting playstyles and things that are really valid, and because not everyone's going to play it the same. I think the meta is going to be really weird. In fact, I really hope that the meta kind of expands so it's not so narrow all the time. Because D1, and I know they really tried to branch out and change the meta, but it did get very strict. So I do think that's a great idea. But I agree as far as the heavy weapons goes and putting them in the same slot as far as the shotguns and the snipers. I really do think that that's a great idea, because then they're not really hamstrung on how effective they can make the weapons, because they're not going to have that heavy ammo the entire game as far as PvP. And I really think it really was PvP that kind of hamstrung the whole thing with the PvE changes. So being able to separate that, I think in the long run, even though it's kind of smart for some people, especially people that are big shotgun sliders and, that's their play style and that's how they enjoy, I think it is going to be a learning curve for them. But I think in the long run, for the general health of the game overall, it's going to be the best thing they could do.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm really looking forward to helping those slad shotgunners learn how to play Destiny. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Look me up.
Wow.
One me, bro. I mean, with primaries. Whoa, with primaries. Come on now. Gray, what do you make of this? What do you make of these freedom slots? Have you thought about a loadout? And what do you think about this condensing these, what is clearly always have been power weapons, into this new slot?
Right. So I I change what primary weapon I'm going to use based on the encounter that I'm anticipating we're going to have. So let's say we're playing trials. I'm not skilled enough that I'm going to 1v1 somebody and win that encounter more than 50% of the time. So I try to stay grouped up and do support fire, and that usually works pretty well using, I find auto rifles work okay, especially if it's a lower rate of fire, higher impact. If I can just contribute some bullet spread onto the player and we can team shoot somebody down, we're more likely to succeed. Now, with that said, if I am put in that 1v1 encounter, I'd much rather have a scout rifle on me. So it's going to create some interesting loadouts, some interesting situations where I can actually switch between these primaries, and I can say, oh, good, I'm with my team. I'm going to go with my auto rifle where I can have a little bit more bullet spread and we can team shoot. Or looks like I'm the one that's going to be flanking. I'm going to be alone in this encounter. So now I can switch to my scout, and I don't have to do an ammo penalty. I don't have to worry about going into my menu and waiting anywhere between 5 seconds to 2 minutes for it to load so I can switch weapons. At least that's how I always feel when I go to my menu during the game and try to switch weapons during an encounter. It never goes very fast. And then as far as the heavy weapons, I don't have, I don't have a beef with it. I do like running shotgun sniper, so that's going to kind of go away. But I'm wondering, are they going to carry over some exotics that allow you to put snipers and shotguns into those primary type slots?
No, I think that's been answered. I
So
think that they've
universal
said that
remote, that whole thing is just done. They're not doing it again.
they're not going to mess
they-
with.
That's good.
They seem pretty strict on that.
Yep. I hope that they don't, I wouldn't want them to actually kind of break what they're trying to create here. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I think none of us have had a chance to get in there and play it. Hopefully we can get one of the guys maybe on the phone that have actually been in there playing it, because it's going to be really interesting after the beta to see how these encounters went with a lot of primary ammo fire.
Yeah, I was hoping that Agrios would get back to me, but it looks like he's too busy having some parties out in LA, which makes sense. Sharks was just talking about how he's going to have to listen to the show later because he can't hear anything where he is. And it makes sense. I hope that they have a good time out there, and we'll just have a great conversation with them next week. I was looking forward to them being on here so close after having played, but oh well, what can you do? All right, excellent. I don't even know where to go from here. Like, it's been 2 weeks or 2 episodes since I've been here. What did I miss last week and the week before, Gray? Was there some good topics that we should get covered?
Oh man, that's a good question, especially when our newsmaster is, and just to remind our audience, we're running a little different format for the show because Sharks, Jez, and Agrios are all at E3. They've done a great job representing Guardian 1. They've been handing out different Guardian 1 members, items. You can see Shark's Twitter is just lit with him getting to meet and greet some of the community as well as the Bungie employees, and even give him some Mark Squared art. So they've done a great job helping to get Guardian 1's name out there, so we certainly thank them for that. But yeah, the last couple weeks, right, a lot of it was build up to E3. Bungie did not have a very expansive this week at Bungie last week because they knew that E3 was right around the corner. And then we didn't get one this week, obviously, because they've all been at E3. We did see that new trailer, which was very exciting. But, a couple things that were kind of big that we haven't discussed yet. For one, how are you guys feeling that they moved up the release date by 2 days?
Yeah,
Feel good?
This is a good. I was going to talk about this and the Destiny beta, but yeah, the idea that they moved it up, I feel good about it because I hadn't yet worked on taking any of these days off, and being a stay-at-home dad, even if I don't get any additional backup, I'll still be able to play the game. So it's a little weird that it's releasing on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But other than that, I'm good with this. Chance, September 6th instead of the 8th, was that a big bomb for you?
No, I'm a college student, so it's not really a big deal. I just, come home after class and grind out some Destiny. But I mean, the only thing that did disappoint me about release dates was the PC release date. Could have been a lot worse, but it is in late October, which, as someone who built a PC just recently, just for Destiny, I am kind of disappointed that I'm going to have to wait a month to experience that other than the beta. That is a little saddening, but I think a September 6th release date is really cool. I mean, I think that bodes well for confidence level with them in the game. I feel like they're really at the point where they're just now polishing. I feel like from this point on, they're going to really be focusing on making sure the content works well and looks good. So that's good. That's cool, man. I mean, it's weird to see that we're so close. It's like, wow, we are only a few months away from experiencing this game, and that is exciting. I just hope that they can deliver. I hope it's not another D1 year one experience where we're kind of like, where's the content at? I have had moments where I've kind of had like flashbacks, like war flashbacks, where I'm like, oh no, they've only showed us one strike in one mission, and it's like, oh, where is everything? But I think they're being really smart and holding their cards close to their chest this go around. As we've seen with the beta, it is just a few tidbits of the game. So I think a September 6th release date is good. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun, and I think players are gonna be pleasantly surprised with the amount of content that is in the game. At least that's my hope.
That is my hope as well. Unilala, September 6th instead of the 8th. Did that screw you?
No, because I hadn't asked for the days off yet, so that's good. But let me tell you, so I was watching, on Monday night, just like everyone else, and I saw it come up, and I'm like, And we are watching the PlayStation, the Sony PlayStation stream, and all I can think of is, oh, that better not be an exclusive. So, first thing I do, obviously, just like anyone else that had that thought, popped on Twitter, and it was pandemonium.
It sure was.
People are like, oh my God. And I'm like, I bet DJ's phone is ringing off the hook right now. Right. Because they hadn't prepared anything in advance. And, when you think about, it's on, the Sony stage, they don't want to get too specific. And just even the idea that they could have put that as a exclusive really ruffled some feathers. And it turns out, thank goodness that was just, an oversight. Probably not an oversight, but they probably could have gotten out with that information a little bit sooner, because they should know their fan base by now. Everyone's pretty rabid on stuff like that, especially where we definitely did not get any idea that the dates were going to be changed. And honestly, like, I've been gaming since I was, 10 years old. I've never seen a game be out for, pre-order like this, where it's really close. I mean, this is really close to actually change the release date. Usually it goes back. I've never seen a game get released earlier than it was anticipated, ever.
Yeah, and you want to talk about an actual, like, what I think really was an oversight? Man, did they drop the ball on releasing the beta date?
Yep.
I mean what?
In the fine text. It's in the fine text.
Yeah. Gosh.
I can understand why they wouldn't release the beta date right there, but it should have been an immediate drop right afterwards, because that was the big piece of information that their core player base was looking for.
I don't know why they didn't. Like, that's what I don't understand. Like, explain it to me, Why weren't they able to release it at the end of that trailer saying, September 6th, beta coming this date, and have the crowd go wild?
Well, when you think about marketing purposes, I was listening to Guardian Radio on my way home from work today, and the way that they put it, and it really makes a lot of sense, and I agree, is that this was the Sony stage. You cannot talk about Xbox, and you cannot talk about PC on a Sony-specific presentation. That's not good business. So I can understand from like a business perspective where they couldn't do that. But as soon as that finished, Bungie itself,
they could have said,
drop that info.
They could have said PlayStation 4 early beta access and put that date, the PlayStation 4 date on there. And then
They could,
tweet
but-
afterwards the PC and the Xbox and stuff. I don't know. Dear Bungie and I, we were actually watching it together while we were on in game chat, and I was telling him, like, I think an intern got fired. They loaded up the wrong video.
Right. Just a few seconds difference, and because seriously, like that would have been huge. It would have been huge, and that's what I was waiting for. Like, okay, I've seen all this before. When is the beta? Like, we were told it was going to drop, and then I even thought that they hadn't, because in the fine text is not that, they should have had it big on the screen. Here's the beta date. The whole crowd would have went crazy, and then, like, that's what you want from these things. That's what you want from a reveal, or like, here is this information. Like, it went out with a whisper, and I don't know. I feel like, yeah, some intern got fired.
Well, this E3 for Bungie was not the best. I mean, it feels like the reveal was like, here's everything, and then E3 was like, well, we'll add a little bit of something to the stuff we already showed you just to tide you over for later. And going back to the September 6th release date, I was one on Twitter freaking out too, dude. I was like, are you kidding me? 2 days on PlayStation? I will play it on PlayStation, yeah, of course, but still, that's retarded because it's gonna like completely ruin the story. First of all, people would be spoiling the story left and right. It would be ridiculous. I was going into all that kind of stuff. Thankfully, it wasn't true, but I feel bad though that we're at the point with that partnership that we even believed for a second that it could have been exclusive. Yeah. They've been taking so much content from Xbox players and now PC players that we were actually, well, this could be true, because this partnership has really, I'm really upset with the whole PlayStation exclusive deal.
Yeah. Oh, did we lose Chance?
I think we lost Chance. So I've been really glad that for the most part the exclusives haven't bothered me. I mean, both because I play on both systems, and also because it's not really good stuff. Like, sure, Hawkmoon was fantastic, but I didn't get that in time for it to be really cool. But with this Borealis, the idea that you could have an exotic sniper rifle that could change element on Q, like that's a big deal. Like, that's something that I definitely like to play with on both systems. So I'm sad about the exclusives just because they don't really, I don't know. I don't feel like it makes anybody happier about the game. Like, the people on PlayStation, it's not even like the coolest thing that they've released, in my opinion, is the Neurogast helmet for the Hunter. Like, I use that on the PlayStation. That's my go-to helmet, and I don't have one on the Xbox, and that bothers me. But other than that, it's not even that big deal. Like, why would you do this? But I mean, I guess to a company, that makes sense. Like, well, let's get some content in here that this other side doesn't have. So I mean, it makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the exclusives go, the only thing, I mean, I get the whys behind the exclusives. The only thing that really kills me, because I am dual boxing now, but the idea that people are going to go into year 2 and not get the current exclusives that PlayStation had for a year. It's nowhere on the horizon is ever becoming available for Xbox. Like, they have not even discussed, if on the day that D2 drops, all that stuff will become available on D1. So they don't get to see the Jade Rabbit. They don't get to do all this, the extra strike and everything. And that's what bothers me. Now I can...
It's crazy.
It should be 6 months. It should not be an entire year. It should be 6 months, because then,
What's crazy is it's not even like that stuff doesn't appear in the Xbox version, because there's a ghost on that Echo Chamber Strike on the PlayStation, and you can go get that ghost on the Xbox if you glitch into that area. So it's not even like it's, well, we never put that stuff into the game.
Right.
It's just we haven't.
Locked.
it's just locked. Gray,
Trolling.
did you get Gray to talk about the September 6th release? I don't know if I asked you if it made your life difficult or not.
No, it was actually amazing because Hefty Flounder, my wife, I want to play this game very badly with her when it first launches. We got into Destiny together. Obviously, you've heard the story. She got into Destiny before me. And she has to fly to Los Angeles to visit with her aunt on Thursday. So if it was launching on Friday, she wasn't going to get to play it until she flies back the next week. So now that it's actually launching on Wednesday, we get to play together. I'm taking Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. And then so I put those vacation requests in on Tuesday of this past week. And yeah, so we'll get to play together Wednesday. When do these things, like when Destiny 1 came out, what time of day, if you did like the digital download, could you actually get in and start playing the game? Was it like the 10 a.m. Bungie time, or was it like midnight, a midnight release type thing?
I think it was midnight.
It was midnight originally, and the other ones were very early morning, because I remember getting up very, very early to try to get on.
So that's great. I mean, we're probably not going to go to sleep that night, and we're just going to, be playing Destiny all day. Which will be great. We wouldn't have been able to do that had it been on Friday. So I am happy.
I think that there's definitely we definitely need to keep our ears open because Bungie could do it either way. The first one was midnight, but I think that they learned their lesson from that one. Not releasing that in the middle of the night was not such a hot idea. And so when these other releases came out, they did it like around 10 a.m. so that, here is our staff of people not up until the, 3, 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning to do this. How about go home and get some sleep? And then when you come back tomorrow, we will then open the floodgates. And so I don't know. I don't think I waited more than 2 hours past the time when it was released, but this was also after having downloaded it digitally and having the majority of it on my system. I still got placed into a queue, so it's just something that we should be ready to receive, because it definitely could be either. And to be honest, it really makes a lot more sense for them to launch it at like 10 o'clock in the morning. And they might have even have decided that, okay, well, we could release it on Thursday, or why don't we bump it up a few days instead of bumping it back until 10 a.m. on Thursday? Let's put it forward 2 days. And so by the time we hit the original release date, everyone will be in and playing and happy. So there is that. Okay. Chance, did you get back?
I think. Can you hear me?
Okay, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, cool.
I don't remember where you got cut off. Do you remember where you got cut off?
No, not particularly, but I did have a comment about the release date. I think it's important to note that completely screws up like midnight launch goers who actually go to GameStop and get their copy of the game. If they come home and put their disc in the Xbox or PlayStation and it doesn't boot up the game, and they're like, see you at 10 a.m., people will freak.
Totally.
And I think that's important to have something there for players to play. Maybe not like the Crucible may not be up or something may not be completely up, but you have to have something for players to experience as soon as they get home and put the disc in their console. So I don't know. We'll see how Bungie does it, but that is important for me because I do midnight launches physically because I always enjoy the spectrum of going over to the store and having this huge line of people, and they're all like, oh my gosh, game's coming out, and you're like, yeah, it is, it's gonna be so fun, and that's always fun for me. So I hope they don't kind of screw that up with any sort of staggered release date.
I would say that if they weren't going to release the game until 10 a.m. on the 6th, that would be when the game went on sale. Like I would think that would
I can see that
would be the. Although I guess I could also see the midnight release, but you're totally right. There would have to be something, because if you're going to stay up till midnight and then maybe 1 o'clock when you finally get your game, like it's anticlimactic to go home and then be like, oh, it's not
see
on.
At 10 a.m.
Well, here's the thing. All the games require installation. So I do totally agree with the midnight release stuff. I do all the midnight releases. And I mean, what they did the last time was they did the midnight release at my local GameStop. I went and got my game, popped that in, downloaded the update, got it all installed, and then I was ready to go when they flipped their servers on in the morning. Because if cat, if the sorry,
Oh my goodness.
sorry, be free, kitty. Because here's the downfall for doing midnight release and turning the servers on immediately. All those people at that midnight release, because they're going to be downloading the files, there's going to be a bottleneck with the downloading the files from the server. It's going to take forever to install. And all those people that have digital download copies are going to be playing the game. And all the people that went to the midnight release and have physical copies and, you know, collector's editions are going to be stuck downloading all night while other people are playing the game. So that's why I do think that, you know, having midnight releases is super important. It creates all the hype. It allows you to get the game set up and ready to go once they flip the servers on in the morning.
Yeah, and I would say that's actually a good excuse for them to actually release the game early on PlayStation, because you know it's going to take 16 hours to download and install the updates, whereas Xbox, it's only going to be 30 minutes.
That's true.
Right.
That's very true.
Yeah.
What a bummer that is. Okay, I think that is our show. Went by very quickly. So why don't we do some shout outs, starting with you, Chance. Maybe let these people know where they can contact you. Maybe shout out to, I don't know, a friend, whatever you'd like to do.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm mostly Twitter based. I do Twitter like all the time. I'm constantly on it. Twitter.com/DestinyDispatch. That would be me. And we have a YouTube channel. I'm planning on using it more. I really have some content on the back burner that I'm kind of wanting to do. I am a film major at my college, and I'm really wanting to do some live action Destiny stuff, learning special effects and stuff like that. So I would like to do something cool with that. But that's youtube.com/DestinyDispatch, obviously. So you can go there. I think one last thing I kind of want to say is just, you know, be wary of each other, be nice to each other. I think sometimes I notice in the community where lower people kind of get pushed around and don't get people don't kind of respect the content as much as I would like to see. So you guys just be cool to each other. I know, you know, we're all human beings. We all have ideas that we have on our brain, and we want to let the world know. So just be open. I think that's incredibly important, being open to everyone. And if you want content to be shown, feel free to at me on the Twitter. Just hit me up, say, dude, I want this tweeted out. I will hook you up, because I think it's incredibly important to give everyone their opportunity to have eyes on. And that is it.
That's really great, Chance. You kick a lot of ass. Unilella.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two shout outs this week. First one's going to go to my work buddy, fellow Guardian, and soon to be co-pilot. It's Jay, though. He's going to be driving down to Guardian Con with me and keeping me company, and I'm really excited to go on this adventure with him. And also to my Minnie. So after 3 years of faithfully watching me play Destiny and tell me to get good, she has decided that she is ready to start playing. So I let her play my Guardian the other day, and tomorrow I'm going to let her make her own Guardian on the Xbox. So that's going to be an adventure too. So
Excellent and awesome. A way to share the good word there, Unilella. Gray.
So my shout out's going to be to all the great Guardian 1 members who joined us for the first ever dual night Iron Banner and Brews this past week. So 2 nights of drinking games and Iron Banner with the Guardian 1 family, and it was a blast. The streams are archived, so you can certainly see the shenanigans. But yeah, it was a great time, and everybody survived. Everybody was, you know, at least reasonably responsible until we shut the stream off, and then I can't speak for them. But it was great fun, so thanks for joining, and look forward to the next one.
Excellent. Okay, so I got a couple shout outs. I'm sad that I missed so many of these last couple of shows because a lot of exciting milestones happened. First off, Gray has been with the show for a year. This past May 6th was his 1 year anniversary on the show, and that's really huge. And I wish that there was, wish that I would have had a way to celebrate this. So congratulations, Gray, on a year. That's
Thanks,
pretty
I didn't even
fantastic.
realize. Wow.
Right? Gone by so quickly. Also, last week we were celebrating this Guardian One podcast has been on for 3 years. June 5th was our very first show in 2014. And so I missed this as well. And then also Flounder and I started dating 19 years ago on June 8th. And so that would have been my shout out last week. That's a pretty impressive milestone as well.
Pretty awesome.
And I missed all of these opportunities to shout out. But at this point, additionally, everyone who's listened to the podcast and supported the podcast, and I had a really great time listening to everyone on the show these last couple episodes where I wasn't around. It's such an interesting thing to actually, that's where this program came from. Is I was listening to Guardian Radio and I kept thinking I had something to say, and so I got to experience that all over again, but with this show that I put together with these people that I corralled into talking to Destiny about Destiny with.
Yeah.
But again, I really want to thank everyone in Guardian One for helping with that care package for me. It really means a lot to us, and it really means a lot to me to know that that you all care so much about me enough to really help out in a way it's coming at a really important time in my life. So I just really want to say thank you to everyone out there. If you sent a well wish or if you sent $1, I really appreciate all of your help. So that's it. I just can't thank anyone nearly enough. But know that I am supremely thankful. So with that wraps up episode 137. We would like to thank everyone listening for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any suggestions for topics to be discussed on the show or have any comments on something that has already been covered, please leave them in the comments below or send them to feedback@guardian1.net, and we will see you next week.
Bye.